वेलकम टू टुडेज एडिशन ऑफ मेन स्ट्रीम विद हरप्रीत सिंह तूर। आप सब नूं प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार, आदाब एंड शलोम। वेलकम टू द न्यू बिगनिंग of American politics with the Supreme Court's judgment 9-0 in favor of Trump to let him be on the Colorado ballot. You know, what is interesting is in that judgment, even though the judgment is 9-0, but undercurrents were there. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of what is happening or what was happening, but I'm just trying to put the things in perspective that as I read in different newspapers and everything. And out of everything, what was most interesting was about Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Yeah, even though she is part of the 9-0 decision, along with the other three who were nominated with the Sotomayor, Jackson, and the third one, like they say, liberal justices, all three female, and the fourth one is Amy out of the 9. Amy actually wrote that in that judgment, some of the things were said that the Congress should act on its act. Okay? And as we have seen since, I would say, 2000, when actually the Supreme Court of United States literally stepped into this landmine of American politics, where they actually gave the presidentship of the United States of America to George W. Bush on a platter against Gore. We should not actually, downgrade, or how should I put it, the magnanimity of Al Gore, that he accepted that judgment and made the country to bring the country as one nation. Unlike the former president, like I always say, the former president who refuses to be that he is ex-president and who is going to be a candidate in 2024 again, the former president Donald Trump, who refused to concede the defeat. Al Gore, even though he was aware that if the count went on, there was a chance, even though it may be less than 1%, but there was a chance that he may get become the president of the United States. By Supreme Court, which was majority justices appointed by the Republicans, all those 5 justices went to stop the count and give the presidentship to George W. Bush. And the other 4 who were appointed by Democrats, they went to against it. So, and those people who have been watching my show, first it was American Vision and now it is mainstream on JUS Hindi, and American Vision was on JUS Punjabi. I have been saying from that time that George W. Bush became the president by 1 vote. That was the Supreme Court. Interestingly, in this judgment, the 9-0 judgment actually is to say that the state alone cannot do on the federal structure that pick and choose, because it will be opening up a different kind of landmines where every state down the road can start talking about their own way of going. And that can ultimately lead to maybe another civil war or another breakup or whatever you want to think about. But looking at that, when the judgments were written, Amy Coney Barrett wanted to leave it right there instead of putting an opinion. But the other three, Sotomayor and Jackson and the other justice decided to write even further than that, where they mentioned 2001, 2000 judgment, and then Roe versus Wade judgment, that how these things affect the fabric of America in the long term. And they have put the whole thing on the U.S. Congress, which we know from our experience in the recent memories that the Congress actually is at a standstill, especially after 2022 election, when the House of Representatives was Republicans took control of it by only a couple of seats, and now the margin is even less than that. 3 seats are vacant. They have 218 now, as compared to 212 for Democrats. I think that's the number. So there is no wiggle room for the Speaker, and Speaker Mike Johnson is more interested in keeping his seat than making any bold decisions or anything which actually can start another process of the way they removed McCarthy, that they may remove him also. Even though there was, a hue and cry when in December he kicked the can down the road for the funding, federal funding for some of the programs. But now, as we talk now, there are 6 bills which are there on the Congress, which are ready to get voted on. And the other ones, which are the major issues, they still need to be looked at. So having said that, right now, as we are looking at it, President Donald Trump is actually going to be a Republican nominee. I have been saying it, and even we, including on Mudda with Ashmita and Harjot Singh, we have been predicting this thing, that ultimately Trump will be a Republican nominee, unless otherwise something comes up, which was one of this. And the other judgment which we need to keep an eye on is the judgment on to proceed on criminal cases against Donald Trump, the former president, because he is actually betting on that he will become the president and then he can just kick it down the road. Okay? Whereas the prosecutors want it to be taken care of immediately if possible. So both ways we have this issue. We don't know where we will land with the Supreme Court's judgment on the criminal court to proceed, because that's another thing which is in the Supreme Court right now. President Donald Trump is the president who, even before he got the nomination for the Republicans in 2016, he made a big statement at that time that he can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and still the people will vote for him. He proved himself to be true. Now he is saying that the president is immune from anything, even if he orders or kills his opponent, or orders to kill his opponent. He should not be prosecuted because he is the president and he is taking that decision based on his mind and his views how America will be better. For me, the question is, are we talking about America being a better, or we are talking about one person being in a better position? And I haven't seen previously, there was some few things where you can see, here and there he will say something about the policies. But right now, in this electoral cycle, I haven't heard a single word where, he has a vision where America will be, except, yes, if you call that a vision, that America will be, left within the boundaries of America and let everybody else in the world deal with their own issues and everything. America actually is otherwise also on decline internationally because of some other factors. But if Trump comes in, that process will be enhanced to, I think it will be more quicker, because he has already served a notice to NATO. He is already praising Putin, and he wanted Putin to win in Ukraine. That's a totally another issue. And, he has his own ideas about, how to put up the tariff on everything which comes into the United States from other countries. And we should not forget, in America, we actually had a long run of low inflation. The reason was the goods were manufactured overseas, either in China or Vietnam, Thailand, Mexico, India, or any other country, and then imported at a very low labor cost, because in America, labor is very expensive. So if we look at that, we will end up losing that benefit of lower inflation, and we will have a huge problem about inflation as well as manufacturing, because what happened was in during COVID, the manufacturing was postponed, or it was totally to a halt. So it can happen again. We just got some documents, released about 2020 election and the efforts by the then attorney for Donald Trump, Kenneth Chesebro. And I'm actually, reading from the article which came out on the New York Times. And also there was an issue, there was a talk about him on Washington Post also. Like I always say, my information comes from all these different newspapers, and I always have to say thanks to them that they provide such an immense information, and the job those reporters do, it's incredible. Anyway, so that actually the document is not a small document. It is 1,439 pages of document. And in that document, actually Chesebro's whole thing was to submit the alternate electorals, and those electorals will be put on the House, and the actually legally the states, which the states were doing so far, to challenge that, and betting on Vice President Mike Pence that he will stop the count, and then it will go to the Senate, and the Senate, it will be filibustered, because in Senate, to break the filibuster, you need 60 votes, and Donald Trump will twist the arm of anybody who is going to cross the line against him. And as we have seen that as of today, the Republican Party is not the Republican Party which talked about, providing better services based on cutting the taxes for the business friendly and this and that. No, it is everything what the former President Donald Trump wants. And that was the reason why the border bill was killed in the Senate, even though the senators worked for months to come to an agreement with the Democrats, even though Democrats were not happy with it. But Joe Biden pushed them that no, this is the time we need to, take this situation. We got to get the bull by horns and do it. And when they did it, when they agreed on it, it came out of the senatorial committee passing it with Republican senators also voting with it. And when it was supposed to come on the floor of the Senate, it did not pass. That it required to have that 60 senators to allow the discussion to go ahead, and all the 49s decided not to do it, and one Democrat also joined within those 49s to kill it because he was not happy with what was compromised. So those are the things which we need to keep in mind. Okay. The other thing which I am going to talk, which I did talk earlier also, and I am going to say it here again. Okay. Evangelical Christians consider him as not as a savior, but they consider that he is the guy who will work, create that situation where Jesus Christ will rise, the world will go nuclear, people will die, the earth will decimate, nothing will be left, and the people who follow Jesus Christ, they will rise from the dead, including Jesus Christ, and then they will, Jesus Christ will lead them to heaven. Okay. So based on, different faiths, every faith talk about, what kind of heaven, what kind of not. And when we look at the, with all due respect to the Muslim faith, they talk about the heaven where you have these rivers of milk and beautiful women and this and that. That is what we hear on the media all the time, which is these, when they prepare those people who actually commit the suicide bombers, that's what they are shown. And when you really look at the reality, anybody who lives in desert, he knows that there are no trees, no rivers, no milk. And when you show them that, of course, that becomes part of that. If you look at from a Christian point of view, I have no issues with the faith, but I'm just putting the things in how it could be, there is a possibility. In Christianity, they talk about Jesus Christ, he will rise from the dead, and anybody who follows him and those who follow him and those who are near and dear to him, who were also Christian, they will also rise from the dead, and there will be a family reunification, which is, again, that's their faith. Okay. And same thing, we can go on within Hinduism, within other faiths, and even within Sikhism, they talk about heaven, even though when we look at Guru Granth Sahib, there is no hell or heaven, everything is right here on the earth. And, we are pleased to do the right thing, work, and share. So that is how Trump actually is getting his support from that side of the faith. And the people around him, they want to make the United States a Christian country. And when Donald Trump talks about, the white supremacist wants to make America a pure white nation. Again, that is also part of the Christianity, whether those are Protestants or Catholics, doesn't matter. So Trump actually is playing to those two extreme elements, and he is succeeding in that. And I will not be surprised if he ends up becoming the president again. What I'm worried about is what would happen to the country, the minorities, irrespective of what color or shape you come in. Whether you are brown, you are yellow, you are black, doesn't matter. You are a minority. And those people who actually were part of Ku Klux Klan, they are going to be they will be unleashed. Right now, before President Trump became the president, they were afraid of some laws and law enforcement agencies. After that, they are not. You know, when in Virginia, when the riots happened, when the people got killed, and when he was asked, first he refused to answer anything, and then when he was pushed to answer that, he said, well, you know, there are good people also in there, which means he refused to condemn the violence based on your personal enmity, based on your beliefs against other ethnic group, doesn't matter which group we're talking about. And that actually reminds me of Wisconsin shooting of 2012, where in Wisconsin, a Sikh temple in Oak Ridge, a white supremacist walked in and actually killed not only the head priest, but the president and other people in the Gurdwara at that time. And at the same time, the person who was the first to show up on the scene, Officer Murphy, he was also white. And I had the chance to meet him. When I met him, and I went up to him and I went to say thanks to him for what he did, even though he was shot about, I think, about 16 times, and he had to go through a lot of surgeries and rehab and everything to be back on his feet, even though he could not actively go back to serve as an officer. And when I reached out to him and said thanks to him, he was like, thanks for what? I was doing my job. Those are the people which we need right now. We don't need even in elected offices. Do we need the people who just follow blindly against somebody just because he wants to be the leader and he wants to kill every other thing which comes on the floor or on the discussed, which he doesn't like, or he is afraid that the other person, in this case Joe Biden, may benefit from it, doesn't care about the rest of Americans. We need to think about it and share your thoughts with me, or you can literally text me at 516-448-8722. 516-448-8722 about if there is any issue which you want me to discuss, or if you have any suggestions. Okay, going to now, because we're talking about the politics, the electoral process, which I have been talking about for some time in different countries, including India is also going for an election, and it will start any time from today to May, because the whole process has to be completed around end of May, something like that. So let us talk a little bit about India's election first, before we touch on the farmers' demand and my opinion on some of the things which are happening on the ground over there. Okay. Let me say this thing which I have been saying way before. Your next president in India is again going to be the current Prime Minister Modi. Okay. Now, how many seats BJP will win? I don't know. I cannot predict that, but definitely yes, based on the what we see, what I have seen, what I saw when I was there, it's going to be Modi. A couple of factors. Where you get the news from? Media. Who controls the media? The government. When I was there, I did not see a single channel which was actually looking at any issue critically. And his parliament speech, note of thanks after the budget from the Prime Minister, it was all political statements. I got to give a credit to the Prime Minister that he knows what the people want to listen and hear, and that's what he delivers. He is good at it, and you got to admit, the people who are trying to write him off, or they are dreaming that one day, the people will just wake up all of a sudden and they will say, no, there is, something wrong somewhere. They are just dreaming. Okay. They need to admit, You know, anything when you want to do, first thing is to admit the other person's strengths and then look at what your strengths are and how to actually rise and challenge from a strong point instead of pulling the legs. And I haven't seen anybody putting out, you know, or at least in the media it's not showing up, even though there are people who are good at heart and they are trying to do it, but they are afraid. They really are afraid because they know that if they made a statement within a couple of hours, if not a couple of hours, then within a couple of days, the police will knock on their door and they will get picked up. And that is what is happening. You know, people have short memory. Manish Sisodia, he was arrested almost about 2 years now. And where is he? Any case registered against him? Not yet. But where is he? He's still behind the bars. Why? Because he openly challenged. And when he got picked up, immediately after New York Times covered him, which means in Western media, anybody who gets covered for anything becomes a target immediately. So he got picked up. You know, now they are trying to pick up Arvind Kejriwal too, because in New Delhi / Delhi, they tried to control the municipal corporation and the assembly of New Delhi. They couldn't. They tried to, you know, break away based on what the cases are going on. We will find out down the road how much is the truth in that. That BJP tried to, you know, veer away MLAs from AAP, Aam Aadmi Party, did not succeed. And I definitely find some facts that there definitely probably was, efforts knowingly or unbeknown to the Prime Minister, which I doubt, that a movement was taking. They were trying to create a movement to get some of the, AAP elected assemblymen on BJP side so that BJP can form the government. Because for a person, and here I am talking about the current Prime Minister and the party, BJP, who rules India, cannot rule Delhi, New Delhi, because they do not have the strength. And for them, it is not acceptable. That's what I believe. And it is anybody, it's not just them. I mean, anybody who is coming in the power in the center, they will definitely look at it from that perspective. But now the question comes in the means being used for that. Election of Chandigarh, the mayor, example. Chhattisgarh, example. Maharashtra, example. You know, where the sitting, the majority party, Shiv Sena, was actually divided into two because the government wanted to control the money market of India. And like I talked about the last week, State Bank of India made a statement that they cannot provide to the public and to the court about the bonds, electoral bonds, even though they were quick to freeze the Congress account, which had only about 162 crore rupees as compared to 5,400 some crore rupees in BJP account. BJP account was never stopped from transactions, but Congress was. They cannot provide information on the BJP. Why? Well, I will leave it to your judgment that what's going on. So, and the other factor which is playing role, remember I was just talking about the President Trump here. Same thing is happening in India. Modi, the current Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, he actually is playing to the Hindu sentiments. You know, when Nehru was the Prime Minister of India, his he actually gave very much freedom about liberty of thought, expression, belief, and faith and worship. Okay? It's not there anymore. Whether you agree with me or not, it's not there anymore. Actually, only 2 days ago or 3 days ago, one of the gentlemen who was actually awarded even the awards after those in Uttarakhand that tunnel collapse, he was one of the person who played a major role to get the people out. His house was demolished. Why? Because he's a Muslim. There were other houses on to his left and right, and they are saying his house was constructed without permission. The land was government's. So I don't understand how a piece in the middle belongs to the government and everything to the left and right, it doesn't. Okay? So, and also everything, even though the schemes to provide the gas, cooking gas, or some of the water supply, or the cell phones, or any other scheme which is to the villagers, and 6,000 rupees a year to the farmers also, it is being done as a Prime Minister Yojana. I agree with that up to that point only, the Prime Minister Yojana, because there is no name attached like Rajiv Gandhi Yojana, Mahatma Gandhi Yojana, or Indira Gandhi Yojana. I agree with that. But now look at how it is happening. Even though it says Prime Minister Yojana, but it is always over when Prime Minister Modi talks, he talks about किसने किया है, हमने किया है. प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी का वचन है आपके साथ, प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी पर भरोसा कीजिए. So those are the rhetorics which are playing out there, and people are listening to that. The farmers protest. Let me give my take on that before we go into more politics of Indian politics. I personally, because I came from a village and I know what the farmers go through, what happens and how it happens. Yes, they do have the right to demand for whatever they demand like anybody else, okay? But they do not, and they should not be blocking the roads and the railroads. That's where I differ with the way they use, even though they are desperate to use it because otherwise nobody really listens. I understand that. But sometime, you have to have the patience and long-term solutions and in the long run, how you are going to win. The people you want the support from, if you put those people in harm's way, even though they may agree with you, what you're looking for, but at the same time, their personal inconvenience overtakes everything else and you end up losing. So that's where I differ the way they do it. The government, when government shuts down the highways because the farmers want to march up to New Delhi, which they have the right to protest peacefully, the government is wrong. When the government actually treats those farmers by firing, tear gas shells on them, the bullets, whether those are, rubber bullets on them, why? It is being done as, Israelis, they do against Palestinians. I haven't seen those things happening here in the United States or in England. I will do further research on it. When was the last time something like that happened? When the riots took place after I think it was Blake, one of the African American. Yes, in some of the cities, the cops did end up firing the tear gas shells. The reason was because the crowd became unrowdy, and they tried to, or not only tried, but they also did. They damaged the properties, they burned the buildings and everything. If that happens, I understand that, but nothing like that was happening. Not at all. Which means what? Which means basically we are trying to create a first class citizenship and a third class citizenship, not even a second class, that you will be treated the way we want to treat you. And that actually reminds me in 1980s and 70s actually, and then in the 80s, especially in 82 when Commonwealth Games were held in New Delhi. Bhajan Lal was the chief minister, who was a Congress chief minister at that time, and the movement, any Sikh who was traveling actually to New Delhi, including the army officers of very high ranking, they were sort of like strip searched by the cops. They were humiliated. The people who were traveling to take the flights to fly overseas because they had the families from Punjab and Palampur or the current airport, which is Indira Gandhi International Airport. It was Palampur Airport before that. That was the only airport to go out internationally. And anybody traveling there, anybody who was a Sikh was humiliated. And again, same thing is being repeated here. And that is something which I personally don't like it, and it should be condemned by everybody. Anybody who has some independent thoughts, they need to look at it and come up with some sort of statement based on whatever they think should be the right way to handle the things. That actually reminds me that in the previous farmers' agitation, the current government, again at that time also Prime Minister Modi was the Prime Minister within this election cycle, which is still he is in, where they promised the MSP for that, which right now the protest is going on, which was never delivered, and that's why they are back on the streets. That every effort was made to make it look like Sikhs as the terrorists, as the foreign agents or the people from other country who are bent on ruling India, not as the farmers who were actually out there asking for their genuine demands. And those people, even in New Delhi, which I found out later on, those people who actually were against the farmers, when they found out exactly what was going on, it was a long process. They realized, and then they started, turning over to their favor, and they agreed with their demands, and that's when the Prime Minister ended up, reversing those laws. There were some benefits to the farmers, I got to admit that, but overall, the agriculture industry would have been killed by that. And that is why even the the merchants who had never actually originally worked with in tandem with the farmers, they did for the first time because they knew that it is going to hurt them as well. Because we should not forget, at the end of the day, everybody wants dinner at the table for their family and for their kids, and that is what is actually worrying the people. What about the farmers in Europe? They are protesting too. What about the farmers in the United States? Every year more than $50 billion with a B is given to the farmers as subsidy by the American government. Just imagine how much money is that. That is actually probably the budget of a lot of countries, their annual budget, which is given to American farmers to keep them into the farming. So farming industry is not just on chokehold in India alone or in Punjab alone. It is throughout the world. Why? Because industrialization and everything else is pushing everything out of reach for everybody. And the cost of input and the equipment is rising at a very rapid rate as compared to the prices what they get. Or for example, I will give you a perfect example here. Billions of dollars are given as a tax break to move you from a gasoline car to electric vehicle. Billions of dollars are given to computer industry to develop the chips. But nothing is spent or no break is given to the farmers to buy the equipment that, okay, if you buy a new tractor which will save you money in the long run, we will give you some break on that as a subsidy. It's not done. I haven't seen it, and I definitely would like to see somebody, if somebody has something like that, and they can pass it on to me. Now, at the end, so let's not forget, farmers put the food on the table and we need to protect them. And one thing more which I'm going to mention here, when the water table in those places, including Punjab and Haryana and some other places where agriculture is, the water table is going down, and that is another issue which needs to be looked at very seriously. The fertilizer being used is much more than what it should be, which is affecting the viability of the agricultural land. That is another issue. And so we can go on these issues, but we can definitely take one issue at a time and try to resolve that, and then try to resolve the other issues also. And at the end, there is one more thing, which I want to add here. In Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif is the Prime Minister again, which is Nawaz Sharif's brother. And again, typically, the way it has been in Pakistan, definitely the establishment has a lot of role to play in it. But right now, he is the Prime Minister, and Pakistan People's Party is supporting them. But that is also something which we need to keep an eye on, and we also have to keep an eye on the upcoming Indian elections. I promised you that I will try to talk more about it. And before I leave, I have to say it. I just cannot. I tried not to, but I have to. Anant Ambani and Radhika Merchant's pre-wedding pomp and partying in India, that is something, I don't know what is more important. That is more important, or the issues which affect billions of people. For me, those billions of people are more important than what is happening there from the party point of view. And we should be thinking about those people who make us or make them to be there where they are. With that note, good night and good luck.